Manchester United against Manchester City will be in the final. Nedum, you were there. Obviously, you saw this all play out. Just give us your perspective of what you saw.
To be honest, as the guys were saying, when it was 1-0, 2-0, 3-0 to United, you're thinking, well, this is the game that should have been happening. They looked really comfortable. They looked confident. You know, they were making the right decisions. They were stretching Coventry. Coventry weren't playing anywhere near their best at all. And from where we were sitting, we were with the Coventry fans, and they were down. But then when Coventry scored that first, I wouldn't necessarily say the fans started to believe, but they enjoyed that moment. And then as you start to see United going in the wrong direction, players having to come off the field, and they were losing that element of control, which, you know, let's be honest, we're not used to seeing them have, you started to wonder. But then it should never still get to 3-3. Yes, you can suffer a little bit within a game. We shouldn't be suffering from that whole point, from that 70th minute in. It was wild. The chances they were having, you're thinking, well, what is going on? They still had enough quality on the field to be able to manage that. And all of a sudden, all those eyes which were going to be on Casemiro playing centre-back at the start of the game didn't seem to matter until all of a sudden you were seeing Sims, you were seeing Wright and others running in behind. And that genuinely is one of the worst performances I've seen from United after, bizarrely, after they went 3-0 up. I thought they were really good value until all of a sudden, as I say, like Højlund is celebrating in front of the United fans, and it's like he was almost non-existent within the game. The United fans, come the end of that game, were cheering when they won the coin toss to have the penalties down at their end, and cheering because they got a chance to take the penalty first. Like, that's all United gave them for like the last hour of that game of football, and that's not good enough. And hopefully for them in the final, they have more players available, because if they play anything like that with this sort of team in the final, they will be destroyed, because that is so alarming as a performance goes.
Nedum, we heard Rob Palmer talk about Ten Hag's body language on the touchline. And of course, managers can play up to the cameras. What did you make of his reaction or lack of it when you found when he found United very much on the back foot?
I think, to be honest, for him, usually, if he had a good squad available, he'd be turning around towards the bench and thinking, well, this is the person I'm going to bring on to be able to do this. But I think they were filling quite a few seats on that bench with people who were essentially just available. He didn't have enough people to be coming on to probably take off the people who he thinks deserve to be taken off. And that feeling there as a manager on the side of, like, helplessness. Yes, like, we can look at his reign in totality, but as he's standing there, I think he would be disgusted by that performance. But again, the more senior players that he has available are all on the field. He'd be hoping that they'd be able to sort of stem the flow that Coventry had and just find a way to get through the game in those key moments. And for him, as I say, he can talk to them, but is that going to change anything? He could try and look on the bench to change something. Are we going to bring on an 18-year-old or 19-year-old to replace someone senior? It's probably the last thing that this moment needed. So I think that was a picture of a man that is essentially helpless and thinking to himself, like, what, unfortunately, in my opinion, what have I signed up for? Because this is nothing that he's probably ever expected to see.
He, of course, spoke in his press conference ahead of this, saying, look at my squad over the 100-plus games that I've been in charge here. I think I've had a full squad once to choose from. Does that offer him up any sort of excuses? No. As Nedum says, when you're looking at the bench and there's just nothing, you can't go for anything there.
No, they're playing Coventry City here in the Championship. I'm not offering up any excuses for this man. It's far from ideal, but show me a manager who's always got a full squad and I'll show you a liar. You know what I mean? It's part and parcel of the game. Again, they're playing a Championship side, being dominated by a Championship side, hanging on for long periods. This is just unacceptable. Yes, they're in a cup final. He's a dead man walking in this job. Yeah. Dead. You don't spend 1.25 billion plus to see this garbage. You don't. You don't spend that to see a manager standing with his hands in his pockets, literally doing nothing. When Coventry got it back to 3-1, right, who, by the way, they made a change at half-time in terms of going from a back five to a back four, which is more in line with what they do in the Championship, and they were much better. But when they get it to 3-1 back, after United scored against the running play, which the Fernandes goal was, somebody has to put their foot on the ball with a red jersey and say, you're barely going to have another sniff of this football. Never mind near our box. You just completely throttle this team that don't have as good of players, that don't have the quality, that are not used to playing in big stadiums like this at Wembley in a semi-final, and you just suffocate the life out of them. No, it's exactly the opposite happened. They're open and they allow this team to look like... If if you were watching this game from 45 minutes onwards and you just flicked the old channel on and went, oh, bit of soccer game on here, and I mean this, you would not have known there's one of the biggest clubs in the world who spend a fortune with a manager who has a reputation that's got him this job from Ajax, Erik ten Hag, and all these players. You would not have known that one team was spending millions and millions and the other side were almost out of business a few years ago and scrapping away in the Championship. Now, if that doesn't tell you, and by the way, United have won this game.
Yeah,
they're in the final. But if that doesn't tell you where they are as a club, and it's not an isolated incident. This is not anything isolated. We're looking at a bigger picture here. This is knockout football. Anything can happen, right? It's not how you gauge the long-term vision. And we're looking at a bigger picture here from a Manchester United perspective. That's unsustainable. You've heard me say that in the show many, many times, the FC show. This is unsustainable. To continue to be dominated by the weaker teams in English football is unsustainable as a long-term vision. And that is the problem that Erik ten Hag has.
I think it's hard to judge him as a manager in the league over the last 18 months. It's hard to judge any manager with the amount of injuries that he's had. But it was the way that they capitulated today for me that is hard to find an excuse for. To be in total control of the game like that and kind of, I don't want to say crumble because they've got the job done, but for the game to be flipped like that and then to be on the back foot, that has to come down to, man management and seeing what's happening on the pitch and noticing those signs that, things are turning and trying to make changes. So I think it is hard to judge him as a manager over the last 18 months, but I don't think you can have an excuse for that today.
They didn't capitulate. Listen, they didn't capitulate because Casemiro was at centre half.
Right.
Would it have been any better if Lindelof and Varane had been back there? Because they would still have had to have control of the middle of the park. And if you've watched Man United recently with Casemiro in there, they can't control the middle of the park because he can't run around. Now, would he all of a sudden be this energetic youngster that can play 120 minutes at Wembley? I don't think so. So I don't really think that would have made much of a difference. Yeah, they got a bit more experience going back in there, but they would still have been wide open in the middle of the field. That's what they've been all season. I just think the whole thing with this is look, this is not one man's issue. This has been an ongoing problem. But ultimately, he is one of the guys that steers the ship. Mm-hmm. And I'm afraid, even if he wins in the cup final, and we talked about this before the show, I may have to sort of retract what I said, but even if he wins the cup final, that might not be enough for this guy, because if you're looking at longer term, these kind of performances, and there have been many of them this year, many of them are just unacceptable and unsustainable.
Let's get some reaction now from the Manchester United camp. Alexis caught up with Harry Maguire.
Harry, congratulations, back-to-back FA Cup finals. I know you guys had to suffer to get there, but what are your feelings after? Is it a bit of a disappointment that you didn't get to wrap it up earlier, or is it just kind of satisfaction and joy that you got the job done in the end?
Yeah, obviously it's a great achievement. 3 finals in 2 years. Yeah, it's mixed emotion in there. Obviously, we're delighted to reach an FA Cup final. It's really important for this club to be challenging for these big trophies. And yeah, it was. I mean, it was a chaotic game. I mean, we played really well for the first 65 minutes of the game, really professional, and then I don't know what happened. I think we've got to look at ourselves. We've got to take more responsibility. We acted like kids out there, and we've got to show that we're big men, and to play for this club, it comes with a huge responsibility, and we didn't show enough out there in the last 30 minutes of normal time, and then obviously extra time. I think the boys was really cautious of not losing the game. We really fancied ourselves on penalties. We know how good we are at penalty shootouts, but on the other hand, we've still got to do more to go and win the game in extra time as well. So, listen, we're disappointed with the end towards the game. We'll take a lot of positives from the way we started, but the most important thing is reaching the cup final.
And so said, so done. I got to speak to Onana last week, and he spoke about how sometimes his job has been made difficult because of the injuries that you guys have had and the inability to field a consistent back line. You're a part of that back line, and you're the only fit centre-back really that was able to show up here today. Do you want people to kind of empathise with you there, that that's probably why we do see these up and down matches?
Well, look, we don't want to make up excuses, but obviously it does. It's just a common fact that it does have an impact. I mean, we lost Willie in the week, who's been playing alongside me. We lost Mason in the week. We lost Sofyan in the week. So, look, we've had to change. We've worked on tactics and then we've had to change players in and out. It's been tough. It's been a tough week preparing, especially for the staff, because they know they want to work with the team. They want to prepare well, and players for some reason keep getting little niggles, keep getting injuries, and it's frustrating. But listen, it's a good win. We're really happy for the fans. We couldn't have left this stadium without getting through to the final. It wouldn't have been right for the fans after suffering a disappointing year. We need to make sure that we reach the final, but also not reach the final. We need to go there and perform.
Well, you got a goal here today, of course. That definitely set the crowd alight. And I saw a tweet that went out right after that said, I don't think we talk enough about your mental toughness. Someone called you a mentality monster. Is that something that you describe yourself as now? I know you've had to put in that work as well. And is it kind of showing now?
Yeah, listen, when you play for this club, it comes with a lot of responsibility, a lot of pressure. And obviously I was captain for 3.5 years. We had a difficult year. My form wasn't as good as it was in the previous 2 years, and I come under a lot of talk, a lot of media attention, and no, I'm really happy where I am now. I'm playing really well. Feel like I've had a really good season individually. Obviously my main focus is making sure this club and this team gets back to performing more consistent, and obviously I'm really happy where, like I've said, where I am mentally and physically, and I'm looking forward to the remaining games of the season.
And for the final now, another Mac derby yet again. You know, for fans that are wondering how you guys will get it together to go toe-and-toe with Manchester City, what would you say to that?
Yeah, definitely, obviously a magnificent team. Everyone knows that. But we know it's going to be a tough game, but we know we've got to prepare well. If we play like we did in the first 60 minutes, we'll give them a good game, and we'll make a good game of it. If we play like we did in the last 30, it's a no contest. So we've got to make sure that we perform for 90 minutes. But a lot of games to play for between now and then.
Harry, congratulations on making it to the final, and all the best.
Thank you.
Before we head to Spain for El Clasico coverage, Nedum, just final thoughts on what we've seen today. One of the strangest semi-finals I think we've covered here on ESPN, given the nature of the celebrations at the end.
Yeah, you could say that, and I think even you could see that in the interview that Alexis just did there. Alexis is trying to be so positive, but Harry Maguire knows that it's kind of an embarrassing win for them because it should never have gone the way that it did. But I think Harry Maguire summed it up. You know, the most important thing is the fact that they're in the final. But as we will discuss and everyone else will discuss, it's not the only thing, because there were some very significant issues which came from that match itself. And yes, it's ended up being a classic game. And I think it's weird as well because Coventry, this is a game they'll remember even though they've lost. They were 3-0 down against United and they should have won. But the fact is, there's that team that's made it to the final again. The third final in 2 years, as Harry wanted to remind us all. So they kind of got the job done, but just not in a way that most of us anticipated.
Some of those comments he made were pretty on the spot. I mean, played like kids. Surprised to hear him say they were frightened of losing the game. Playing Coventry in the Championship, and let me just address the injuries before anybody gets the tissues out with this sob story. Every one of the United players that started this game was an international footballer, including young Kobe Mino, who made his debut for England recently, a terrific young player. Every one of them was an international, and they were playing Coventry, right? So please, let's not talk about injuries. Let's not talk about players that were out. Manchester United are in the final because there was 2 instances and with 10 minutes to go or less in extra time that were inches away from putting them out. They're there. They won the game, and that's all I've got to say about it. The rest of that game, apart from the first 45 minutes, was nothing but the story was Coventry City and the shambles was Man United.
It's incredible. Like all the years of FA Cup, that a team is so sheepish almost to book a place in the final, given their performance in the semis, Kieran.
Yeah, I've never seen a game like that. But as Craig says, they are a team of internationals. So that's why I go back to my point of saying that they should have made it a much easier job after half time than to hang on like that. So, but credit to Coventry City. I want to give credit to them. I don't want to take anything away from them because it takes some doing to come back from 3-0 down in the semi-final.
Yeah.
So credit to them for that. I hope that their fans give them a good cheer in the next home game.
If this was Liverpool or Man City or one of these, Villa, I wouldn't be talking about it like this. I say, okay, 3-0 up, it can change. Bang, quality. Yeah. Counter-attack, change of tactics, quality, everything. I wouldn't be saying that. It's the nature of the opposition. It's the nature of the opposition. But yeah, so we have a big Manchester final, possibly, in terms of a contest.
Well, we definitely do have a final.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about in terms of a contest, because that, if they play like that, and they have done a lot this year, it won't be a contest. As Kieran said, my God, the Midlands football, Coventry City, Championship, Matt Robbins, all this club have been through. Disappointment will be the big key word on the board because you cannot take that back. You cannot now. You can't reverse that chance. You just cannot. And the chances of being in this position again are probably going to be slim. But boy, you cannot criticise these guys who are not at the same level. They're nowhere near the same level. What they put on today is a football club for their supporters, these players, their families and all the coaching staff. They can look at these guys in the dressing room and say, I'm proud of what you did today and what you almost achieved. This lot in this dressing room are in there wiping their brow going, my God, how did we manage to do that? They did. Coventry are out and that's all that matters. But what a game they made of it. Terrific.